Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Border Town Strange. I'm Pam,
And I'm Jess.
and tonight we are going to bring you along once again for the ride as we delve into the history of haunted cemeteries, mysterious and cursed graves, and all the fun that goes along with that.
That's right.
So,
Part 2.
part two. Very good.
All right. So before we get started today, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, for all of you who are watching right now on YouTube, if you could take just a second and hit like and hit share for us and kind of help us get this moving along so we can get more watchers and viewers, it'll help us oh so much. And for those of you over watching live on YouTube, if you could hit that thumbs up, hit the bell and subscribe and help us out there too, it would be so much appreciated. We also encourage everyone who's watching to hop into the chats and join the conversations. Feel free to ask us questions, add in your stories. We love conversing with you guys, and your stuff will pop up on the screen too, so you can kind of really be a part of the show. It's super duper fun. And also make sure to stick around towards the end for the notebook game. And if you don't know what the notebook game is, you're just going to have to stick around and find out. It's super fun though.
It is. It's a great time.
Yeah, it is. It's so much fun. Who knew that my lame ass notebooks would bring so many people so much enjoyment? Also, just for everybody watching, all of our regulars, and if you've never been here before, we always go live, but we're going to do something a little bit different next month. The month of April, we have 2 shows in them, and we are not going to be live on those, but we do have 2 brand new shows that are dropping at 7 p.m. Central on those 2 Wednesdays. Pam gets to go and take a fancy cruise.
Super excited.
Yeah, so pre-recorded some shows for you all, and they are super good. I'm actually really interested in watching them back because we did them and then didn't get to see them afterwards. So the first one in 2 weeks will be with author Robert Prevost. He wrote Monstrous Arkansas. It's a book on cryptids in Arkansas. So we do all sorts of cryptid stuff on it too, but we actually delved into ghost hunting and his experiences in his youth, Bigfoot hunting, and we even were talking about near-death experiences. So it's a super, super good one. What does Rick
He's talking
say?
about your notebooks. They ain't lame. He's right. They were not. They are very interesting. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Chris. Yeah, so the first show, the first Wednesday, will be with Robert Prevost. Don't miss it. It was super fun, and I'm actually excited to watch it back too. And then the second Wednesday I can't remember what the date is on it.
April 10th is the first one, and the second one is April 24th.
April 24th. So the April 24th one will be with Brian Terrell from Red Dirt Cryptids out of Enid, Oklahoma. He's also an author. He wrote Oklahoma Cryptozoology 101. And we have a really great fun show with him. He's always a blast to have on. We talk about not only Bigfoot and Dogman, which are his favorites, but we kind of delved into some other stuff. And I think we even took a step away from cryptids too on that one.
I think we did. Yeah.
That one was a hoot and a half. So make sure to check those out. Like I said before, those will drop as if we are doing our lives. So it'll be a brand new show for you all. Make sure to, click like on those too so we can keep our channels moving.
Absolutely.
Right? All right. Do you have any other housekeeping, Pam?
Not that I can think of. I think you covered everything. Just make sure everybody sticks around to play the notebook game at the end because it's going to be fun.
Hi, Alicia. All right. So part 2. First of all, if you have not seen part 1 yet, when we're done, go back and watch the first one. Because there was some really, really fun stuff in that first one. We got to play, we talked about the cemetery games, and all the hilarious stuff that you have to do to get your ghost to arise in your own hometown cemeteries. We just looked at so much interesting stuff. We did have a call out for some interesting games from other people. We didn't get a whole lot back on that, but we got some very interesting stuff from some local people that we know, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more towards the end of the show. But stick around because it's super duper interesting. So today we're going to start out with the next part, which is witches' graves. Now, witches' graves lean a little bit more towards urban legends than it does in real fact. Um, there are so many witches' graves that rather than me just kind of explore all over the US and bring you lots from all over, I opted just to stick for Kansas. And there's a reason for that. Kansas is one of the states that has the least amount of witches' graves. But in my research, I found 14 just in Kansas. So you can
Wow.
imagine
Yeah. How many are everywhere else?
imagine how many witches' graves there are in the entire just the US, not even leaving the US. Holy cow, you go into the European countries. Wow, I can't
Everywhere, I'm
even
sure.
imagine. So, we're gonna talk about witches' graves. So, you need a few things to have a witch's grave in a cemetery. So, you need to have a strangely named stone, a strange name on it, or a lonely stone that is out of place. Maybe it's sitting outside the cemetery as if it wasn't allowed to be buried inside. You
That
need a
does
weird
happen.
mark. Yeah, you need a weird mark on the grave. Something that doesn't look like it belongs there. Maybe it looks slightly evil. Or you need a strange epitaph. And an epitaph, for anyone who doesn't know, is literally just the little sayings that kind of go underneath your name and your date. And the one that Pam has pulled up here is the most well known. Uh, Unfortunately, everybody thinks the one in their cemetery is the only one, and that's where the witch is buried. So it usually says something along the lines of, "Remember, friends, as you pass by, as you are now, so once was I, as I am, now so you will be. Prepare for death and follow me." I feel like I should have had the light on underneath my
Dun, dun,
face.
dun.
Right? Um, the stone you're looking at on the screen right now is May Knots. And this stone is actually in the Galena, Kansas cemetery, the Oak Hill Cemetery. Just to the north, I believe, of Galena is where this one sits. This is their witch, and it's solely because it has this epitaph on it, unfortunately. Um, I didn't go into great detail on looking up all of these headstones and the residents thereof because I know they were just normal everyday people. And frankly, I didn't have time. With 14 of them in Kansas, we're going to go through. We're not going to go into that great deep depth of detail, but I will go into a little bit about the hauntings supposedly around them. Now, in the Galena Cemetery, supposedly, if you go out to this grave at 3:33 in the morning, you can hear weird sounds and you can hear her cackling.
Hi, Mona
Hello,
and
wait,
Enzo.
Enzo. Hello, Mona. Yeah, so now we're gonna build here. Um, Galena and Riverton, Kansas are very, very near each other, just a hop, skip, and a jump and away. Riverton has another famous, unfortunately, witch's grave. Um, I didn't go ahead and go find the stone itself, but it's literally the exact same one. If you go out to the grave at 3:33, you will hear weird sounds and cackling, right?
Sounds like they maybe
Um,
got a little confused.
yes. The same grave is found in Lawrence, Kansas, at Oak Hill Cemetery. If you go out at 3:33, you will hear weird sounds and cackling. And they have a lady in white, ooh, which I will talk about here in just a little bit. We're going to do a little bit of Lady in White, Resurrection Mary stuff. So next, we're going to move just to the west of us, um, to the Chautauqua County Round Mound Cemetery. There is a witch's supposed grave. Um, this one's a little fun. So she likes to blow cold air on people. she sends trucks down the road to chase you out of the cemetery,
Hmm.
right? I don't know if she's got like a guy like on loan whenever somebody comes in the cemetery, she wants to get rid of him. She like calls him up. She's like, "Hey, dude, could you come chase these kids off? They're driving me nuts."
Chris has family at Round Mound.
Ah, well, I don't. We live very, very near Round Mound Cemetery, so I'm sure there's a lot of people in the area that have family buried there. The next one we're gonna go to is in Manhattan, Kansas, at the Cedar Creek Cemetery. This one was interesting. I wrote this one down because it's a little off the beaten path of the regular witch. This one has a witch and a warlock
Ooh,
buried in it together, right?
interesting.
Apparently, they were local doctors who were a witch and a warlock during life also. And apparently they murdered their patients,
Wow.
right? And they don't haunt their own graves. They haunt the graves of those that they killed to keep uh people away from those graves so that they don't know what they had really done,
That's crazy.
right? Yeah. Supposedly they killed 7 people. I could not find any kind of information on this that would validate it through any kind of open public record. So,
And where was this one located again?
Manhattan.
Oh, oh, I have to tell
Yeah.
my son about that.
Yes, it's very near K-State.
And yeah, if you're not watching from Kansas, we do have in Manhattan, Kansas, not Manhattan, New
Oh, yeah.
York.
Yeah, these are all in Kansas here. So next we're gonna move to Pleasanton. In Pleasanton Cemetery, this witch's grave has a red ball of light that chases people out of the cemetery when you go to her grave. And this one is another "As I once was, you shall now be" epitaphs. In Helena, in the Huron Cemetery, there is a headstone there of a witch. So apparently, the stone was cursed by the witch herself, which I'm unsure how that works. She was already dead, but apparently she rose up and she cursed her own grave. Um, but on it, the epitaph, it says, "Cursed be the villains that molest their graves,"
Ooh,
right? I'm unsure. I think probably by the sounds of it, perhaps she was all for cemetery rights and maybe keeping cemeteries where they were and not removing. I think it probably had something along the lines of that. But
this,
there's another one. So, just to the east of us is Baxter Springs, Kansas, and they have one. Bless their hearts, Baxter Springs is also one of the ones that will claim theirs is the only one in the whole world. Unfortunately, that's not true. This one also has the same epitaph as you see on the screen. Um, in this one, if you dance on her grave, a dark shadow will follow you home and actually haunt you for a while. There's a lot of stories about how people went out there in the middle of the night, came home, and then got to live in a haunted house for the next 2 weeks while things bum rushed them out of their closets and hid underneath their beds and blah, 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 blah. Um, and here's I'm gonna mention this. Pam and I were actually talking about this backstage before the show was, and I think she grabbed a picture, and I don't think it's in this spot. We're gonna show it later. Um, a lot of these stones have what people think are pentagrams on them, but they're not pentagrams. They're literally the logo for the Ladies of the Eastern Star. It's the ladies organization that stems off of the Masons. It's like the ladies side of it because ladies aren't allowed in the Masons, so they kind of started their own little organization here, and it looks like one. And Pam will show you a little bit later on. We're going to be kind of going through some of the different kinds of markings you'll find on stones, and we're going to pop that one in there. It doesn't look like a pentagram unless you are just very unknowledgeable on this
yes,
situation.
absolutely.
And the reason why I bring this up is within the Baxter Springs Cemetery, just a hop, skip, and a jump away from the stone that I'm speaking of, is another stone that has an Eastern Star on it. And a lot of people confuse the two, and some people think that it's the other one solely because it has the Eastern Star on it. So we'll go over that one a
I
little
could
bit
see the
later.
confusion with it. I really could, especially
Yeah.
because normally the people that are out looking for witches' graves are honestly the younger crowd, and a lot of them aren't familiar with,
Yeah.
they're out there daring each other and not really familiar with Order of the Eastern Star or, Masons. They
Yeah.
may know the name, but they don't know specifics.
Very true.
Mm.
So next we're going to go to Kansas City, Kansas, in the Wyandotte National Burial Mounds. In this one, she's a little interesting. So if you go to her grave and ask for power or money, she will show you a sign of which one you will receive. So she's kind of like a fortune teller almost.
Wow. Is she like the little
However,
fish, that flips around?
I guess
Fortune telling
I
fish?
through all the little stories and stuff I'd found, I never could see where anyone could tell how she shows you. Like, what is the sign? Like, does something rise up from the grave, or do you like mysteriously find a little piece of paper in your pocket that was like,
Great
your
pumpkin
wishes come
rise from the
true?
pumpkin patch.
Yeah, couldn't find anything. So, the validity of it, I don't know. Anywho, so we're gonna go over to Topeka in the Rochester Cemetery. Um, this one is a little interesting. Their witch is called the Blue Albino Woman, right? And she was buried alive. Ooh. So, uh, she actually walks the cemetery at night. You can see her. It's almost a white lady thing, but she's blue white. And she haunts the cemetery. She walks it every night looking for the people who buried her alive to seek her revenge. So that one's a fun one. We're going to move over to Fort Riley to the Post Cemetery. This witch's grave is kind of quiet, but they have lights that dance around her grave.
Oh,
Right?
that's cool.
Um, Summit Hill Cemetery in Pratt County. It's not sitting within a city, so it's just within the county there. They have simple lights too. Um, Chautauqua County again, El Cato Cemetery, and anybody that's listening from our area knows El Cato. It's very, very famous for its witch's grave. And I am sorry to say, I believe the person responsible for this one is sitting above me right now.
I do believe so.
Shame, shame.
It's interesting though when we talk about this. Listen to me justify this really quick here. Um, the picture that we have up of May D. Knotz's, and you see the epitaph on there. When I was in high school, one of my brothers, my oldest stepbrother, him and his girlfriend took me out to cemetery, and they were like, "Ooh, you've got to see the witch's grave in Galena." Well, we go out, and they take me to this one, and here's the epitaph, and I was like, filed that away in my little brain. And we happened to be in El Cato looking at headstones, which I was one of the weird kids that absolutely loved cemeteries and reading the headstones and everything. And I walked by this tombstone, and I can't remember the lady's last name. I remember her first name is Tempe. Um, but I'm reading her epitaph, and it's very close to this one. I think hers says, "Watch ye youths as you pass by, as you are now, so once was I. As I am now, soon you will be. Prepare ye youth and follow me." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's the same thing that's on the witch's grave in Galena. Ooh, I wonder if this is a witch's grave." So every time we would go out there, I'd be like, "Oh, check this out. This is the same as the witch's grave," and that evolved and morphed into this is the witch's grave, and it is still called that to this day. But yeah, sorry guys, that is totally on me, and I apologize to anybody that affects.
Shame.
But it
Taphophile.
happens easily. It really does.
Yeah. Taphophile. A taphophile is a person who loves cemeteries and cemetery art and all things related.
Yep. Total
So,
tapafy.
taphophiles. Now y'all know.
Yeah.
Okay, so the El Cato Cemetery is going to be a really big jumping off point for me. So, what does it say?
It says Rick said his wife's dad's buried in Rochester Cemetery and has stories about their witch. That's
Oh,
interesting.
awesome. Yeah, witches everywhere. Like I said, I couldn't possibly go outside of just our state. I mean, I could have, but we would be here for about 20 shows and we would just list them. Okay, back what I was saying, El Cato. So Pam conspired against us all, and now we have a
Sorry.
witch living in El Cato Cemetery. And
Yeah.
El Cato has some crazy stories involving this witch that has evolved over the years. So apparently, it's one of the seven gateways to hell.
Oh, nice.
The
Yeah.
Pope refuses to fly over it because it is so evil, right? And the witch that was buried there bore a demon child who died shortly after and was not allowed to be buried within the property. It was buried outside of it in an unmarked grave. But apparently, that baby rises up and haunts the cemetery at night. Ba ba
So they
bum
got this one
ba.
confused with another story too, didn't they?
Yes. So this brings me to the biggest one in Kansas. So I'm sure you have all heard of it, and if you haven't, you have been under a rock somewhere. So we're going to talk about Stull, Kansas, one of the seven gateways to hell, right? So this is actually I'm glad we're doing this story. Uh some of you all at home who know Pam and I know that we have both been separately working on books for many, many years, have not gotten those out because I've got 1,000 other things to do,
Because
but I've already
ADHD.
done research on Stull. I got to pull out old Stull stuff to bring to you guys. So Stull Cemetery um, is a little tiny district. It's called Deer Creek Community. It's not even a full-fledged town anymore because it is so tiny. I don't even think it has a post office anymore, so it's been dissolved as a full town. 20 people live in this little area, and it has this little teeny tiny cemetery in it. Um, the town of Stull was named after Sylvester Stull, who was their very first postmaster there in 1903. And this cemetery we're talking about sits on the top of a hill called Emmanuel Hill, and it has a little tiny abandoned church on it. That church got torn down in 2002, by the way, but
I was going to
there's
say,
a
yeah,
picture of it
it should be torn
beforehand,
down. They had to tear it down
right?
because people kept messing with it.
Yeah. Sleepy little know nothing town who in 1974 got a slap to the face when some students at KU decided for their October issue of their student run newspaper, they wanted to write some creepy stories. They didn't care if they weren't true or not. And one of them went looking for a creepy sounding town nearby and they found Stull. And they were like, ooh, it sounds like skull. So they wrote an entire article on it. And in it, the writer claimed that Stull Cemetery was one of the seven gateways to hell. One of the, and unfortunately, this makes me so mad. This is bad journalism. A couple of years later, another paper picked it up. It was, oh, it was actually the Kansas City Times. So they have no excuse for this. They picked this up and said that it was one of the two places that the devil appeared every year, twice a year, at the spring equinox and on Halloween. The second place was a desolate plain in India. And unfortunately, this kicked off because it made into a major newspaper. It kicked off this huge thing where that year at Halloween, they had like 200 some people show up at this little tiny cemetery and they trashed it.
Mhm.
Beer bottles and just the town ended up having to raise money to put up a fence around it and to hire security for Halloween times and for the spring equinox solely because of what this Kansas City paper did. unfortunately. Now, in the story, I'm going to elaborate a little bit. There's a couple of stories that go with this cemetery. So the first one said was that the devil started appearing in the 1850s because a stable hand stabbed the mayor to death in the cemetery's stone barn, or the church is what they were referring to, which was shortly after gutted by fire. So apparently, since 1980, this building's looked like this,
Mhm.
right? I will tell you all, the town was so small, it's never actually had a mayor. So there was never a mayor to stab, right? So in the second story comes our witch. So if you'll flip back to the first picture, it shows the picture of her actual stone. This poor lady's last name was Wittich. It's not witch, it's Wittich, right? The dates are all wrong for this story, but this is the one that they latched onto. So in this story, the witch Anna bore a devil child, but it was so deformed that it died within a few days. So we're getting spring back to that's where the stories for El Cato has come from. It's
Mhm.
weaned it right off of this one. And frankly, between me and y'all, this is straight up Jersey Devil Mother
That's what I
Leeds.
was just thinking. It sounded like, yes.
Yeah, like poor Kansas, we can't even come up with our own crap. We've just got to take it from everybody else's stuff. So after the devil baby died, they buried it outside of the cemetery, but near the church. It was in the church's view, I guess, to kind of keep it in line. And it would rise up and haunt the cemetery. And this stone supposedly sits underneath an old tree, which was the witch's hanging tree. It was actually the tree that they hung her from, and where she dropped is where they buried her. Ba, ba, ba,
And they were nice enough to
ba.
put up a stone. Wow.
That's right. So apparently, the reason why they had a hanging tree for witches is because this entire area was full of witches. In fact, the town was almost all witches. And this is so apparently the real name of the town was Skull, but later on when they wanted to cover it up, they changed the K to a T to Stull, um, to cover up all the witchcraft that was being practiced there by the original settlers. Um, and apparently, the original main street that went through town was called Devil's Lane until 1905.
Ooh.
Yeah, super spooky. Uh, now, there is a supposed hauntings that go on here, and I've written a little short list of things that people say supposedly happen. So, they've reported being grabbed and touched, hearing unexplained voices, ghost children, loss of memory, time shifts that slip you backwards, and time loss, especially when you're inside the church. I found a story that said two teenagers had become scared when a strong wind began to blow through. They ran to their car to find it had been moved to the other side of the road and pointed in the opposite direction. Then they left it.
Wow.
Yeah. And inside the church, it has its own little fun thing. So apparently, no rain falls inside, even though there's no roof left. Bottles thrown at the side do not break.
Alicia said that stone looks newer. Had it been replaced, maybe because of vandalism? The stone's from like
No.
1910, so it's probably, and it is granite, so that's probably the original stone. Kind of looks like
Yeah,
it is.
granite will stick
It
around,
it
man.
holds its
Yeah.
shape well.
Yeah, and with that smooth surface on the front where the lichen and stuff really won't grow, it'll be good. It'll look nice for years and years and years. Where was I at? Oh, inside the church. So there was an old wooden cross that hung inside, and if anyone walked in at the exact stroke of midnight, it would turn upside down. So now we've got some cemetery games going on, which is kind of fun. Um, Apparently, one man felt wind inside the church and was suddenly blown to the floor and pinned there as if somebody was sitting on him.
I can see why he felt wind in the church. It's pretty open.
Yeah. But yeah, the church isn't there anymore. So it was demolished in 2002 after one side had suddenly collapsed. It was just too dangerous to be around, unfortunately. So um anywho, so there's supposed to be also a stairway to hell, right? On Halloween, the stairway forms in the middle of the cemetery, and anyone who walks up it gets sucked into hell. I don't know why you got to go up to get sucked into hell, right?
Like a roller coaster,
Um,
maybe? Up and then down.
something. But like I said, so this one has this one also has the Pope story that goes with it. And this one actually goes into a little bit more detail. Apparently, this was seen in Time magazine that Pope John Paul II ordered his private plane to fly around the area en route to a public appearance he had in Colorado. He didn't want to fly over unholy ground, right? Um, and basically, well, this cemetery is one of the most famous in the world. If you type in most haunted cemeteries, it will come up in the top 10 all over the world.
Mhm.
Stull Cemetery,
Consistently, yes.
consistently. It was so popular that uh, Urge Overkill, a band out of the 80s and the 90s, they wrote an entire freaking song about it. You can go look it up.
It's crazy. Enzo said,
Right?
sounds a lot like those stories of finding a random staircase in the woods. Yeah, it
Well,
does.
like I
Have a
said,
great
it's
way to say
like
it.
they took they took every conceivable cemetery game and legend and lore and anything you could think of when it comes to a cemetery, and they smushed it into this poor little tiny nondescript cemetery. Now, I could not find any information on anybody having a personal story of everybody goes to see it, but nobody ever seems to say anything except for they felt really weird.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
you're going to feel really weird walking into a space when you are expecting
Yeah.
something. Now, I will say, Pam and I are both very firm believers in tulpas and making thought forms. Things arising because there's bad feelings or animosity about a place for so long that things get created. And maybe that's a little bit what's happening here. Maybe it's just been projected on this place for so long that now there really is some bad feelings with it. I will say, back when I was first researching this, like back in goodness, it was like 2010, somewhere
Yeah,
around
it was
there.
before 2012.
Yeah, internet wasn't that great yet, and there wasn't a whole lot of information out about Stull. So I actually called one of the local historical societies in a nearby town and talked to somebody personally who actually lived in Stull at the time. And they let me know that, well, of course, the story was completely fake and it was from this KU kid. And, but he did let me know that there is actually a very small cemetery about 5 miles away from this that is exceptionally haunted. And he refused to tell me exactly where it was, but he was like, if you're ever in the area, he gave me a couple little directions. He was like, "Just go that way. I guarantee if you go out after night, you won't stay for very long." So, there may very well
Virtual.
be a very nice haunted cemetery just 5 miles away from Stull.
Sounds
So,
fun.
I'm sorry to burst y'all's bubbles if you were Stull fans, but it is just complete hokum started by, well, he's not a kid anymore, but at the time a kid out of KU who was needing a good Halloween story for his paper for Halloween. So,
Yep.
unfortunately.
Bum, bum,
All
bum.
right. So, moving on, we're going to go. Ooh, what are we doing? Oh, we're
Resurrection.
doing Resurrection Mary. Let me flip my notebook. All right. So, we're going to talk about Resurrection Mary, Hitchhiking Lady Ghosts, and Ladies in White. So, because they all just kind of bleed into each other a little bit here. What you're looking at on the screen right now is Resurrection Cemetery, and this is the home of the very famous Resurrection Mary out of Chicago. Um, Everybody has heard about her. I don't even need notes to tell you what happened. This girl had gone off to a dance, was lonely, didn't have a date, danced with a few gentlemen, latched onto one of them, asked him for a ride home so she wouldn't have to take the bus. He takes her home. When he pulls up in front of her house, she's not in the car. He walks up to the front door uh, to ask who's there. Somebody just disappeared in my car. They said this was their home. It's an older lady, and she's like, "Oh, that would have been my daughter. She went missing 30 some years ago on her way to the dance."
Mhm.
And oftentimes, she will have borrowed his jacket because she was cold on the way home. And he goes back past the cemetery just to double check the woman's story, and he finds his jacket on her grave.
Draped over her grave, yes.
Yes. Resurrection Mary. So this is her home. And if you'll flip to the next picture, Pam, part of her story, not only does she wander around and get rides from Ubers, I don't remember how many I found. Uber rides, people giving her rides, people accidentally hitting her on the road, and then she disappears. But this is part of her story here. There are these burn marks on the gates just outside the main gates of the cemetery, kind of on the bars just to the side of it, where the bars actually look like they've been pulled apart a little bit, and they have handprints on them. And they said that's where Resurrection Mary stands when she makes it back home. She
Ooh.
holds onto those bars so tight it's burnt them. Kind of cool. Um, so
Looks
this
like
story,
a little bit of
hmm?
the it looks like a little bit of the copper came off on their hands.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's where the marks come from. Like so many people
Probably.
grab a hold of them. The verdigris off of the iron there has come off on their hands, and it makes it look like it's burnt or
Yeah.
something. The interesting thing about Resurrection Mary is that out of all of the copycat stories that you find from it, because this is kind of urban legendy too, the Resurrection Mary story has its own name in just about every state. There's one somewhere. She is the only one that has dated incidences where she was seen and it was reported. So, the first one I found was in 1939. Jerry Paulus met a girl at the Library Grove Hall. They danced and kissed. She asked him to take her home, where she promptly disappeared when he drove past the cemetery. It was in the newspapers. 1973, she was picked up at the Harlow Dance Club. A taxi driver stopped at Melody's Lounge across the street from the cemetery, asking about the woman who just skipped out on her fare. That also happened in 1973. She was reportedly seen again in 1976, 78, 80, and 89. In 89, a car struck her and it actually dented the car, but she disappeared.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. Um, and there's lots more. We won't go over them all here because we don't have time for all of that. But if you're interested in her story, look it up because it's wildly detailed.
Mhm.
All of these reports, and they're still getting reports to this day. So she might be a real deal.
She could
I
be.
don't
That
know.
one's interesting.
Yes. So I'm gonna move on to some other ones. The I called this one the Hitchhiker. This one's out of Wrightsville Cemetery in Arkansas, so not extremely far away from us. So in this one, a young man offered a beautiful girl in a white gown a lift home while he was driving on a rainy, cold night. He offered her his jacket, just like in the original story. He stops the car to let her out, and she's gone. He knocks on the door, finds the old woman, blah, 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 goes to the cemetery, finds his jacket. So we've got the repeat going on here.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm not going to go into more hitchhiker stories because it's literally the exact same thing over and over and over again. I did not find one within Kansas, so yay for that. We haven't latched on to
That's
a
surprising.
hitchhiker story. Yeah, it really is. So, women in white, let's move on to them because they're everywhere. And yet again, there's no way possible I could sit here and do every single one of them that exists. That there's handfuls of them in every state. I'm just gonna tell you some of the more interesting ones. So the first one I chose was called the White Lady. This one's in Union Cemetery in Easton, Connecticut. Um, this one is a dangerous one. She often runs into traffic in front of the cemetery and she causes accidents all the time. Kind of like Resurrection Mary. This one has dated incidents too that were reported to the police. Her causing accidents. She had one lady actually drove off the road and into the cemetery gates because
Um,
she hopped right out in front of her. She's so she's seen wearing the white gown and she also roams the cemetery when she's not flying out into traffic and causing accidents.
I kind of wonder how many of these lady in whites are actually deer, and they're like, oh
Oh,
crap,
yeah.
I hit a deer. Okay, let me make this sound better. Ooh, it was the lady in white.
Yeah. It could be. I don't know. Um, okay, moving on. The Lady in White, and this one comes from the old burying point in Salem, Massachusetts. So creepy spot as it is. So she's seen wandering the cemetery and will burst into white points of light when you spot
Wow.
her. She'll like I imagine like the fairy godmother on Cinderella. She's like
Yes.
poof, and all the little sparkles come down. She's also seen in the cemetery parking lot, and she wanders into the nearby restaurants that are on the same road.
Enzo said, next thing you know, you'll be talking about ghost deer. Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh,
I
we've
don't
never done that.
I don't know what you're talking about, Enzo. You're crazy with your ghost deer.
Not a deer.
I also found the Weeping Woman. She comes from the Adeleda Cemetery in Paso Robles, California. So she actually has a name. So her name is Charlotte M. Sinton. She was a Mennonite woman who lost all of her children to diphtheria, and she ended her own life by hanging. She appears every Friday night between 10 and 11:30 p.m. to lay flowers on her children's graves and walks the rows dressed in her billowy white dress. So she's got a whole backstory. I did look her up. Charlotte M. Sitton is a real lady. I don't know if she was Mennonite or not, but she did have many, many children, and many of them did die of diphtheria. It's probably where the story stems from. There's a large amount of children buried around her. So it's
Oh,
probably where
that's
that one came from. All right. So just before I move on, I was going to give everybody just a little bit of back history on white women, the legend of it, because it's very far reaching. And nobody quite knows the actual origins of these stories because they're so widespread. So you find her on nearly every continent, in nearly every country. Nearly everyone has a name or a story behind her with no actual touching origin points, which is very strange. So they call her also things. So you got the White Lady and the Lady in White and the Weeping Woman and the Wailer and the Lady of the Mist and more,
What about
right?
La Llorona? Is she one of those? Would she be considered
Yeah,
that?
she is. So I didn't, I'm not going to delve into them all, but I'm just going to give you a little trickling here so you can kind of get a general idea of how profoundly spread this is. So in the European countries, they have white women there, and they are there considered gentle spirits, usually of healers that have passed. And when they pass, they're no longer human. They become earth spirits or elves. that stay
Interesting.
around and help people, right? So in the lower European countries, they're helpers. In the northern sections of Europe, like Ireland and Scotland, they take on a menacing element. The white lady suddenly becomes the wailing women or the
Banshees.
banshees, the
Yeah.
harbingers of death. So there, they're like, oh, if you see one, you're screwed. In Scotland, it's so bad. If you see one, they call them the weepers. If you see a weeper, you know that someone in your clan is going to die very soon. So you don't want to see her. If you move over into Spain, they have a legend there, and you see their women in white in threes, right? They're called and I'm probably going to butcher this, and I apologize to anybody who's listening who knows how to say this correctly. The Las Lavanderas, or the Midnight Washerwomen is what they're called. They appear by creeks and they are washing the blood-stained shrouds of those who are getting ready to die. So if you spot them, you're screwed, right?
Mhm.
In Mexico, we've got the famous La Llorona that Pam was just talking about. And everybody kind of knows her story. She was famous for drowning her own children and then in death walks around wailing for them or bemoaning what she had done to them. And my favorite one is the one out of Venezuela. So their white woman is called a Sayona. Um, and this is a woman in white. She works kind of like a siren. She sings and calls out, and she draws in men who are cheaters, husbands who are not faithful, and she lures them into the nearby woods where she promptly turns into a monster and eats them whole.
Ooh,
Fun,
sounds
fun,
like
fun.
Deer Woman too.
Yeah. That's what you get for cheating, dudes.
Yeah.
That's what you get. Right? In Japan, they have white women, and those are called yureis, or they're dark souls, basically in English. They're vengeful women in white who were not given the proper rituals when they passed. In Japan, they have all these rituals they have to follow before you're buried.
Mona said she
Mona.
likes her.
Yeah. In Japan, they have all these rituals they carry out before you're buried, so that you can be guided into the afterlife properly. If these rituals are not done, you can't be guided into the afterlife. So these white women are women who are literally stuck in the in between and are vengeable because of it, because they can't rest. Um, just to give you guys a little clue into that, in Japan, it's like flip flopped than it is in the US. In the US, we wear white for weddings and black for death. And in Japan, it's like the opposite. White is for death there. So that's why their women would be wearing white. But they do see women in white there. Um, and of course, then you bring it back into the US.
Rick said, is it him or have most of them been seen by water sources? A lot of them are. Not all
Yeah.
of them, but a
Well,
lot of them are.
it, that also stems to the fact that a lot of white women are attached to crybaby bridges.
Mhm.
Another huge urban legend, which we will delve into on another time. But yeah, they're seen by water because they're most often attached to crybaby bridges, and that goes along with the La Llorona story, her drowning her children, women in white,
Mhm.
even dear women, same kind of shtick there. They're usually attached to a bridge someplace.
Yep.
Yeah, but that brings us back into the US. I could go more, but we're not going to do that. In the US, it has really taken on this urban legend type of thing. Um, and the white women are there because of jilted lovers and uh, murdered mothers and lost children and the virgin girl who didn't make it home. you know, so that's where we get all of our white women.
Mhm. Rick said, like the little girl he's seen out by the bridge west of town. Yeah, like her.
Sure. All right. So think, is it time to move on to you, Pam?
It is.
I'm gonna let Pam take over for a little bit while I get a drink because
All right.
the
So
lady in white makes me tired. Whew. Hmm.
let's see. These are kind of nondescript pictures we have for the next couple of things, but some of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit are cemeteries in our area. And there's a few cemeteries that have been moved. And when they are, it's normally for things because like lakes were built in an area where these um, had been at. One that's very close to us, and it's in Copan, Oklahoma. It's called Busby Cemetery, and it was moved to its current location when Copan Lake was constructed, and that was in, I think they began in like 1972, and then they
Hmm.
finished in 1983 in April. That's when the gates were actually closed to fill the lake. And I apologize for the poor picture. We're going to have to get out and get some better pictures of some of these places. There are a few headstones that are pretty flat to the ground, and they just say unknown because when they were moved, they were either degraded and they couldn't tell, or there was no headstone and they were just, moving the body with no known name. Um, and this next place, it's a little bit further away. It's over closer to Newkirk, Oklahoma, near Enid and near Ponca City, out in that area. But Call Lake, it was again when a lake was built. Call Lake was created, uh, I don't remember what year, but where Call Lake is now, there were, I think, 11 cemeteries. And two of the biggest was Oak Grove and Washunga. Um, and they were both near Newkirk, Oklahoma. But in 1997, erosion of the lake bank turned up some human bones and casket fragments and pieces of tombstones that were left behind. And that caused quite the uproar, I'm sure. It would upset anybody. Um, so these cemeteries were supposed to have been moved when the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers built the dam on the Arkansas River. So that was in the early 70s, I guess. And that created Call Lake. And it's huge. It's got like 168 miles of shoreline on it. So for a man-made lake, it's pretty big. Um, let's see. Now Washunga, it was at one time it was a graveyard for like almost 670 Kaw Indians. Um, and in that area, there's still like concrete strips and things that form the borders around some of the family plots. And you can still apparently still see places that are kind of sunken in, like you can see where a vault was that was underground. Now, the Corps had actually hired a company called Big Will Inc. out of North Carolina, and they were supposed to come in and relocate Washunga and the other 10 cemeteries over to Ponca City. But apparently, what they ended up doing was they just removed and reburied skulls, which that's almost worse than just having left them completely. Um,
Yes.
it was
Isn't
terrible.
that
And I
nice?
remember
We didn't want to have to move everything, so we just decapitated your loved one and left the
exactly
rest of it. It's
horrifying.
terrible.
And I remember it was probably about a year or two ago, and I was telling Jess, I know this story about blue rayon socks sticking out of a cliff in Call Lake, and she's like, "Oh, you're crazy," and I'm like, "No, I've got to find this," and I found it. I found the article, and
Ugh.
photos were taken. They were not included, and even if they were, we would not be including them here.
No.
Um, But one of the photos that was taken, it did show blue socks covering foot bones that were protruding from a cliff at Oak Grove. Um, and there was like originally 5 acres for Oak Grove Cemetery, which that area it's now called Coon Creek Cove on Caw Lake. And they only learned of this erosion because a boater spotted an exposed casket in like 1987. So that was really not that long ago. Um, so when this happened, obviously it created a huge uproar, and there was a movement to create a memorial at the site at Coon Creek Cove. And Jess and I were actually in Enid along with her daughter Raven. I don't know, 2 weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago now,
Yeah.
and we drove out to see if we could visit and pay our respects to this memorial. but the road that leads down to the area is permanently closed. And so we're not, I couldn't find any articles about the memorial actually having ever been truly built. So we're not even sure if it was or not.
Yeah.
If anybody
I
ends
have a
up
feeling it
finding
was.
out, yeah, if anybody knows or finds out, let us know, because that's interesting.
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy, terrible. But so the company that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers had hired to move this, when they went back to say, hey, what the hell? What happened? The company had dissolved and they could find no one that was even remotely connected to it. So it was off, they basically took their money and ran.
That's
Terrible,
terrible.
terrible. It was
Plus,
terrible.
why would you bury your loved one in blue socks?
Blu-ray, yeah, Blu-ray on socks. The one sock that's going to be there for, it'll outlast cockroaches
Yep.
probably.
Yes, it will.
Oh, creepy. Okay, moving on. So I wanted to talk. I found some really cool ones that you may have heard of before, but I thought they were interesting. This one is the it's the plot for a Lawrence Irene Ford, and she was 10 years old in 1871, and she died of yellow fever. Well, her mother, obviously she was extremely distraught. She'd lost her child. And Florence was terrified, absolutely terrified of thunderstorms. So when she died, all her mother could think of was how scared she would be, if she had to be in these storms by herself. So what she had done was, and you can see here behind the headstone, there's an open spot and you can see the steps that go down in. So the mother's name was Ellen, and she had this small window fitted at 6 feet down, at the head of her mother's, or at the head of her daughter's casket. And she had these hinged trap doors put on it. And so when it stormed, she would come out and she would go down in and she would close the metal trap door on top of herself and sit there with her daughter, and sing and read to her until the storm had passed over. And it is still there today, looking like it does now. But they did go in and cover. If you see where the steps are at the very bottom, that's where the glass window would have been. They have covered that over with cement. They did that in, like, I think, the mid 50s, just to keep
Goodness.
vandalism from happening. But yeah, you can still visit it and you can walk down the steps if you want to. And you can see people have left flowers and little stuffed animals and things down in there. That's just horribly sad, I think.
It is. And
It is.
I can't imagine that thing didn't fill up with water while it was storming. I just imagine that poor lady down there in her wellies
Yeah.
up to her knees in water.
Yeah. Because I mean, it couldn't be airtight, she couldn't
Yeah,
survive down there. But yeah,
that's crazy.
it is crazy.
This
Okay.
is
So
one of my
this
favorites.
one, this guy, his name is Victor Noir, and you might notice a few spots on his body, which are a little, yeah,
Worn,
a little
a
worn.
little
That's a good word.
shiny.
Shiny. That's even better. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, a little shiny.
Yeah. So
Insect.
yes, exactly, Enzo. Okay, so Victor Noir, he was a French journalist, and he was a real outspoken critic of, like, the imperial regime. He was shot and killed when he was just 21 years old. Actually, Emperor Napoleon III's cousin is the person that killed him. And Victor was laid to rest with this life-size bronze statue of his likeness covering his grave. Um, and you'll notice there are a few worn spots on it.
Yes.
His statue has become a folkloric symbol of fertility. And
Yeah,
people,
well, he was also, according to legend, quite the man about town,
oh,
if
well,
you know what I
that
mean.
that explains a
That
lot.
he may have perhaps fathered quite a few children that
Oh,
he wasn't actually a father to later, if you know what I mean? Like, a lot of illegitimate kids.
yeah, Rick,
Um,
exactly. Wow.
yeah, so, yeah, now it's quite the thing if you're wanting to get pregnant,
Yeah,
or maybe you're having some fertility issues to go out and have a fun little hump.
Oh God. You know what? You know what is weird about this whole thing? Like, that's not weird. But I was looking at this and, I get the face, I get that. Why are his shoes worn?
Well,
His boots are shiny too.
ew.
I know, right? Ew. That's
I
so
wish you'd pulled up,
important.
there's actual pictures of women sitting on him, like,
Yeah.
from a
They were
distance,
a
like
little
somebody's caught them,
yeah,
and whoo, it's a
risque.
little scandalous.
Yeah, a little risque.
Yeah.
But yikes. So that one was pretty humorous. I wanted to kind of lighten it up after the last few. So anyway,
Yeah.
on from Victor. Okay, so this is an interesting headstone that I came across. And it's interesting to me for a personal reason. If you know me, you'll know why. Um, but this is about amputees, and that amputees might even bury their limbs. Back in the day, it was because people feared not being whole at the time of death would mean that you weren't allowed into heaven on Judgment Day. But on this particular headstone, it's the gravestone of Waite and William Tripp, and it's located in Newport, Rhode Island. And these are the children of William and Desire. And on it, it talks about these. This is Waite and William, as well as his wife's arm, which was amputated February 20th, 1786. And the two cherubs at the top represent the children, and you'll see the arm that's in the center there, and it's Desire's arm, a picture of her arm in there as well. And so if you do know me, or if you don't know me, I am a below knee amputee, and I had never honestly even thought about asking for my leg after this. I'm sure it was just incinerated with all the other medical waste, but gives an all new meaning to having one foot in the grave, though, huh?
Oh, maybe you should have your headstone done like that too, even though your extra limb isn't in there. Just add it to your epitaph.
I maybe.
Yeah.
That's actually what I started calling my art stuff, was one foot in the grave.
Yeah.
Kind of fun. Okay, so we're gonna throw this back to Jess for a minute. She's got a couple that
Yeah.
were turned over to
So,
us.
I don't know, is Stacy on here right now? Is she yet in the chats?
I have not seen her. If she is, she hasn't said anything.
Okay. Well, so during part 1, we put a call out for interesting graveyard stories and games and such. And Stacy Huey, who is a local teacher, a music teacher here in the Caney area, sent us some fun ones. She has family that lives in Greensburg, Kansas. It's a little ways from us. But there are two very interesting stones in this cemetery, and her mother was nice enough to send us pictures. So these pictures you're going to be seeing are literally just from like this week. So you can really see. And I did some digging and some genealogy work and stuff, and I've dug up the original stories on these. So the first one here I'm calling The Baby in the Glass. So what you're seeing here is a headstone that's handmade, with like a glass fronted, almost like a cave situation. It's 1.5 feet tall, and it's located in the oldest section of Fairview Cemetery in Greensburg, Kansas. So as of now, it contains this baby doll that you're seeing here. And on the glass is painted an inscription, and it says, daughter of F.L. Scott, born July 26th, 1925, died July 26th, 1925. God bless our darling baby. Now, the interesting thing about this stone is how you're seeing it now. It has only been this way since 1989. Prior to that, the baby doll was not in there. That's a new addition. Prior to that, it was full of bones. And Stacy had said she had recalled looking through the glass was very foggy at the time, and thinking she was seeing bones at the bottom of it, as if they had buried this baby above ground and covered it just with glass, right? That was the story behind it. Now, I looked up the history of it. In 1989, They had actually found the glass broken out of the front. They don't know if it was vandalized or if maybe the mower hit it or hit a rock that chucked at it. Um, the gentleman who found it, his name was Ed Schroenberger. He was actually the sexton of the cemetery at the time. And now a cemetery sexton is literally someone who's like a caretaker. He's in charge of making sure all is well. He found it, got all the glass cleaned up, and he said it didn't actually have bones in it, but it had weird wires chopped up and into the bottom of it, which he didn't understand. He said just it was just weird wires, just nondescript weird wires. Um, he put the glass back together again so he could figure out exactly what it said because apparently it was not very legible at the time because glass gets old and it gets the fuzzy white stuff all over it. And anywho, he was the one that figured out what it said. He replaced the glass and repainted on it, and he was the one that added the doll, not knowing that this would become a thing. It would be creepy after a while. I think he's a little sad that that happened. Um, but yeah, that's basically the story on that. I could not find anything on FL Scott. There's no other Scots buried there, so I'm thinking maybe they probably weren't in the area for very long. And she was obviously, if not stillborn, she died the same day she was born. So that's the story on this one. But if you want to see this one, it's in the Fairview Cemetery in Greensburg, Kansas. And there's another one in the same cemetery if you want to flip to the next picture. Now this one is fun. And I had a fun time finding the story on this one. So when Stacy sent me what little bit of information on it, she was just like, I just remember there was a weird headstone in the cemetery with a cracker in it. And I never knew why there would be a cracker in a headstone. So I was like, here we go. This is where my skills kick in. So I've called this the Mitchell cracker, right? For obvious reasons. This cracker or hardtack, a hardtack were part of the rations that you could get in the military when you were serving overseas. It was part of the rations, the food rations that you would get. And it's basically just like flour, water, and sometimes salt added to it. The name kind of hardtack just kind of lends
Yeah,
what
dried out enough
it
so
does.
that it wouldn't mold, basically.
Exactly. So Dudley Mitchell served in the military and he got his rations one day. And unlike every other day, the hardtack he got that day was so hard he could not bite through it. He thought it was hilarious how hard it was. He kept it on him and would show the other guys this piece of hardtack. He would throw it at things and it wouldn't break. He just thought it was great. And it actually made the trip back with him to his home state. And it became a part of his shtick. He always had it with him and he would just show people. He would like show a stranger, like, check this out. It became so much a part of him that when he was making plans for his eventual death and he was pre-buying his cemetery plot and his headstone, he opted to have a little square insert made for it to keep his hardtack in because he thought it should be buried with him, but he still wanted people to be able to see it.
Wanted to show it off. It's pretty
Exactly.
impressive, the fact that it's still in one piece. It was some
It is
serious.
still in one piece. Yeah, so this hardtack or this cracker belonged to Dudley, whose only wish was that everyone get to see it. And I think that we were doing a great job passing this along. His cracker has now been on YouTube for the masses to see. So hit that like and share and subscribe so everybody can see Dudley's cracker.
Pin Paranormal said that is the best and truly inspiring.
Yes.
Enzo said it's probably still edible today. I'm not sure it was edible ever.
I don't think it
not
was
sure.
ever edible. That's why it's still there. It's probably going to be there longer than the Mitchell stone.
Probably. Crazy. Goodness.
Exactly. All right, so what do we got up next?
Hiawatha.
Hiawatha. Okay, so I wasn't originally gonna do this one, but the more I thought about it, like I've known about this place for quite a while. This is in Hiawatha, Kansas, and it has a really neat story to it. And I was like, you know what? We're telling all these little crazy stories. I might as well chuck this one in there because it's actually kind of funny.
Perfect place for
So yeah, this is the John Milburn Davis Memorial in the Hiawatha, Kansas cemetery. It is huge. Now, John Davis was an extremely wealthy farmer in the Hiawatha area. Um, he was so wealthy that the people of Hiawatha took it upon themselves to keep asking for his money. They were like, "Hey, John, we need a new pool. How about it? And we need a new hospital. How about it?" And he was basically like, "Go stick it." He was like, "It's my money. I'll do with it as I please." And this put a lot of tension between him and the townspeople, but he went off along his merry way. Um, Anyways, his wife unfortunately passed in 1930. They were very much in love. Um, it really hurt him badly, and he went to go figure out what kind of a stone to put on her grave. And he was like, "I have all this money." So he decided to put this very large stone with a covering over the top for her so the stone wouldn't get wet. It was very expensive. It was made, let me hear. I wrote down the dimensions and the prices here. So, he had a 7.5-ton slab placed over his and her graves and raised a 52-ton slab of granite over the plot on 6 granite pillars. So just that part there in the middle was the original, right? Then he decided, after that was done, to place 2 life-size statues of him and Sarah done in Italian marble in Italy and had them shipped back over here. And it was a picture of them on their 50th wedding anniversary, which is not the picture down below. I could not post a picture of every single statue in here because it'd be a whole lot of pictures, but I'm going to list them for you so you know, right? So this part was done. 2 statues, the cover, and the stone, right? The town was like, "Hey, if you can afford to put all this out on your memorial, uh, why don't you buy us a new park?" Right? So he was like, I don't think I'll buy you a new park, but I think I can order a second set of statues of me and my wife from Italy, and then maybe a third set." So he put 2 more sets in, and those are setting underneath the enclosure too, right? So the townspeople are getting ticked. Hiawatha is like, "That bastard. We're needing this new thing, and downtown needs sidewalks and blah blah blah." And they went to him again, and he turned around and bought 3 more sets of statues. Now, by this time, he had run out of space underneath. So he had to start putting them outside of the building. And he actually put in this secondary enclosure around it to keep people from messing with the statues too much. Right? By the time he was said and done, and he had these little plinths and things put up at the corners and really decorated her up and got these gorgeous Italian marble slabs put into the wall there, the colored ones and everything. Once all was said and done, they estimated that he had spent around $1 million at that time. I didn't look up how much $1 million back then in the 30s and 40s would be now.
Ooh, a lot more for sure.
Right? Um, After that, he took it upon himself to literally set out there every day and watch it to make sure nobody would vandalize it and to enjoy the looky-loos that would come to see it. He rarely spoke to anyone, especially anyone from in town from there on out, and he carried these business cards on him. And if you asked him anything about that memorial or his money or what he planned to do with his money, he would hand you one of these cards and it said, "I'll thank you kindly to mind your business." Wouldn't speak to you, just hand you a card, right? The Kansas City Reporter did a story on this before he passed, and they did a little interview with him. And all he told the reporter was, "It's my money, and I'll spend it the way I please."
Okay, so $1 million in
Yeah.
1935, it's worth in today's money in 2024, $22,651,532.85.
Woo! Well, it's his money, and he did as he pleased.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he himself died in 1947 and was interred there where he was supposed to go. Um, there was only 10 people present at his funeral. Um, and they actually thought that was quite a lot for him, right? Now, sadly, there is one statue there that is missing its head. It's of him. It went missing sometime in the late 80s, early 90s. Somebody just lopped off the head and it went missing.
That's terrible.
Apparently, when they were investigating it, they found out that most of the people in Hiawatha had known who had done it, and
Oh
they knew
no.
which pond that the head was residing in, but nobody fessed up.
Oh my.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they can't replace the head because the entire memorial is under the protection of the Kansas State Historical Society. And so it can't be replaced unless it's the original head. So until somebody fesses up and they dig it out of whichever pond it went into,
Oh no.
it will forever stay headless.
That's crazy.
Yeah. There is still a reward out for it though. And this will tell you just how much Hiawatha hates this man. The reward is sitting at $100,000 right now for the head. Any kid who wanted a free ride to college could literally just go pull it out of the pond and return it, but they won't.
Nobody's doing it. Oh my goodness. That's crazy.
So there, if you all want to take a trip, if you're in, near that area there, the John Milborn Davis
Feeling
grave,
lucky.
yeah, in Hiawatha, Kansas, in the Hiawatha Cemetery. There you go. I've heard it's quite the sight to see. I've actually never seen it myself. I need to go see it at some point.
That sounds like a fun road trip. Not to look for the
Yeah.
head, but just to see this. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. We're going to go back to Pam. Let's see. And we're going to move on to how to read the stones. So I wanted to kind of touch on some that were more common to our area. So a lot of these that you're going to see are actually from the Caney area and in the surrounding areas. Enzo said he's after his snorkeling gear right now. That's funny. Okay. So up until the 1500s, headstones, they were mainly for the rich and the powerful. So, if you weren't, you were lucky to get a stone or maybe a wooden cross, and those didn't really last very long. But once they became more obtainable for people, it's pretty much the norm to have one nowadays. So when we look at different types, this particular one, there's a few of these examples in the Caney Cemetery and Sunnyside Cemetery. This is called a box tomb. For obvious reasons, it's shaped like a box. It's a sarcophagus, basically. It's just a not nearly as fancy one. And George Wark, he was a main player in Caney. In fact, our Wark Park's named after him too. And this is his. This is a fine example of that. Other common ones. You'll see these all over the place. This is called a ledger stone, and it's large, it's flat and rectangular, and it covers the entire casket. Um, we've got some others like this one right here. It's called a bolstrum, and it's or a bolster, sorry, and it's cylindrical. It's meant to represent a pillow, eternal rest kind of thing. And then you've got your obelisks, which there's all kinds of different examples. Here's just three that I pulled. The first one is Capstones. He was another uh, well-known and one of the earliest settlers in the area. And you'll notice it is an obelisk, and some of them, some of them had the pointed tips that you'll see on the other two. And what those pointed tips did, they represented the sun shining down from the heaven onto the earth, and it represents a connection between heaven, earth, power, strength, fatherhood. You'll see a lot of these centrally located in a family plot, which is what Capstones is. It is central in their plot.
Captain
And
Stone is also one of our local ghosts.
he is. Yes, he is. And Capstone's obelisk, it's actually called a truncated one because it doesn't come to a sharp point. It has an urn on top of it. And sometimes you'll see orbs on them or cubes on them too. And the next one, the Elizabeth Truscott one, it's more of a vaulted. And it has the points. You'll see you got the center point coming out of the top, but you'll see in the front there's a point coming there. And on the other side, if you can see the back side of it, there's a point on it as well. And that's called vaulted because it's more like the vaults of a church.
It looks kind of like dormer windows on a house, like on a second story of a house.
That is a really good example of that.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the comments over here. Craig said it's time to go dowsing.
Yeah.
Find that head in Hiawatha.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Okay. And then the next examples we have here, skulls and crossbones. That's a big one. And earlier ones, you'll see more likely, you'll see the skull with the wings on it.
My shirt on.
Yeah, like Jess's shirt. And basically it's meant to be a reminder that those who visit, that life is fleeting kind of thing. And in 1690s, they started to be replaced with these soul effigies, which is what you'll see on the right-hand side, which has the face with the wings. And that kind of
it doesn't mean flying skull?
No. Well, the skull does, but the face, the cherub thing, that's more of
I like
the
flying
soul's
skull
flight
better.
to heaven. Yeah, I know, right?
I like flying skull. It's badass.
It is. I agree. And if you see a lamb, this is a very common one. You'll see either the lamb like this right here, or you'll see it on top of a smaller stone. And that pretty much is standard for it to having been a young child or a baby. Let's see here. Oh, this
now,
is
oftentimes, if the lamb is laying down, that usually indicates that it was stillborn or died the same day it was born.
Yeah.
So
that's true. Good point.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of different hands that you'll see. You have the hand pointing up, which you'll see on the right, and that means they've gone to heaven. And you'll see the hand pointing down, which no, it doesn't mean they went to hell. It means that it was a sudden death, like maybe it was an accident or a sudden illness. And sometimes you'll see that on women that have died in childbirth too. I'm going to say that Henry was probably either an accident or sudden illness, would be my guess.
Probably.
And this was interesting. I've seen these before, but I never realized that it meant something, other than a handshake. I always thought that it meant, it's the hand of the person in the hand of God. But in this particular case, if you see the hand with the limp fingers, the ones that are kind of hanging down, these are the dead person's fingers. And the other hand with the firm grip, that's the hand of a friend or a relative in heaven, could be an angelic being or even God themselves. Thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Learned something new. And this is called the marital handshake. And if you look at the cuffs, you'll see one represents a woman and the other one represents the man just by the lace on one cuff. I just thought it was interesting. Represents a marital union.
Kind
of cool. Okay, this is a fun one.
This one.
Yes, I love this one. This is called Hands Held Over a Cemetery Wall. pretty self-explanatory. But what these grave markers are, they're pressed pretty close on both sides of this wall. And what happened was, a long time ago, in this is a Dutch cemetery in the Netherlands, and at the time that this married couple passed, one was Catholic and one was Protestant, and Catholics and Protestants, their graves sites were strictly segregated. You could not be buried in a Catholic cemetery if you were a Protestant, and vice versa. But this couple, even though they were two different religions, they'd been married for 40 years, and the husband passed first, and when he passed, he was buried in the Protestant cemetery because he was Protestant. And his wife had him buried really close to the wall. And while she was alive, she was like, "Look, I don't want to be buried in my family tomb. I want to be buried as close as possible to my husband." And so this is what they came up with. They just raised them up really high and had them holding hands. So I thought that was pretty cool. They got
Yeah.
around it, even though they weren't allowed to. They still found a way around it. They hold hands in eternity.
Aw. It's
Oh,
shocking that those have not broken apart,
it is.
that they
It
haven't
really is.
shifted just I mean, you'd think that if the ground shifted just a little bit underneath one of those, that it would cause them
I want
to
to say
pull
this was
apart.
in the 1600s, if I
Yeah, that's
remember correctly.
crazy.
I imagine they have to be kept up. They have to be. I don't think
Yeah.
they would have lasted that long.
Their
There's
love keeps them together.
There you go.
Aw.
Blech.
Aw.
No, it's very sweet. Okay, moving on. There are a few fraternal orders. There's probably more than this in our area, but I
Oh,
just
yeah.
chose the three biggies that I knew of. This particular one is called Oddfellows, the independent order of Oddfellows, actually, and sometimes it's referred to as the Triple Link Fraternity. Um, and you'll see these on. I know there's some in Round Mound for sure because I remember seeing them last time I was out there.
Mhm.
There's some in probably every little cemetery around here.
Yeah.
But if you see those three links at the bottom, that will tell you that they were in the fraternity. And the letters F, L, and T that are in there, they represent the fraternity's guiding principles of friendship, love, and truth. Which I did not know that. I thought that was cool.
Mhm.
I'm learning. I like it. Rick said, "Doesn't Harry Houdini have something like this?" Are you talking about the hands ones? That's what
I
I
don't know.
misspoke. He might. I don't know. He has something, but I can't recall what it is. Something about
I'm
that.
looking it up.
Yeah, look it up, Jess. Let us know. Okay, and this particular one we actually talked about earlier a little bit. Jess mentioned when we were talking about witches' graves about what some people believe to be a pentagram or pinnacle, and you'll see it here. Um, this is the uh, Order of the Eastern Star, and it's the female version of Masonics, uh, the Masons. Freemasonry is actually what I'm struggling
Mhm.
to get the word for here. Um, and you'll see the symbol. You'll see this on a lot of headstones in the area, and it's the recognized symbol for the Freemasonry, and it's the square and the compass with the letter G inside of it. And I didn't know this, but the letter G stands for both God and geometry. A belief in
Mhm.
God is the main requirement for Freemasonry
Yeah.
membership. And the
Interesting, a lot of people don't know, it's not a belief in God, it's a belief in a God. They
ah,
don't care
there you
what religion you are, just so long as you believe in a higher power. So you
go.
could
Cool.
actually be a witch and join as long as you believed in that
And
higher
that
power.
power.
You believe
Cool.
something rules us or rules over us and helps us. That's the
That's
yeah.
cool. And it stands for geometry too, which is said to help unravel the wonders and the mysteries
Mhm.
of nature and the universe. Pretty cool.
Yeah. And there's the Eastern Star that we were talking about earlier that people assume that it's a pentagram.
Mhm.
It's literally not. And I
No,
can't remember what the 5 points are meant to stand for,
I
but it's
can't remember
literally
either.
just
I
yeah,
remember
it's
the
just the
bottom one
ladies'
stands for the star that shone down on Jesus's birth, but I can't remember what
yeah,
the other ones stand for. That's the only one that
yeah.
sticks out in my
It's
head.
literally the organization that was designed so that the ladies who were sitting home alone when their husbands were at their Masons meetings could get together and have tea too, and maybe do some civic stuff for their community.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's just the Eastern Star. The we were talking about in Baxter Springs earlier that there's actually 2 witches' graves there, and that's because one has the witchy sounding epitaph, and there's one just nearby that has this large Eastern Star on it. And a lot of people who don't know what they're looking for assume that this is the witch's grave because they think it's a pentagram.
Yep.
So,
That is it. Okay. Now, the last one for fraternal orders that I grabbed, this is in Caney Cemetery as well as in Sunnyside. This is the Fraternal Order of Woodmen of the World. And I had always heard that, never really thought too deeply about what it meant. So I was interested to find this out. I guess in 1890, there was a gentleman named Joseph Root, and he started a nonprofit organization, and it was designed for common men, so that nobody would have to die without life insurance. So honestly, it was more an insurance company than it was a fraternity. But he called it the Woodmen of the World. And so initially, any person that bought into this, that bought the life insurance through the Woodmen of the World, they were also given a free gravestone. And the company later changed that policy to just providing $100 towards a tombstone, um, if it had the Woodmen of the World logo on it. And so the original requirements to join the Woodmen of the World were you had to be male, you had to be Caucasian, you had to be between the ages of 18 and 45. You could be any religion, but you had to reside in one of the 12 healthiest states, which included Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Missouri, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, and Ohio. Thought that was kind of interesting. You could not
yeah.
be in a hazardous occupation, so you couldn't be an underground miner, a gunpowder good grief, a gunpowder factory employee. You couldn't be a saloon keeper. You couldn't be a sailor, an aeronaut. You couldn't be a railroad worker, a liqueur manufacturer, or
Ooh.
wholesaler, and you could not be a professional baseball player. I don't know
What?
why on that one.
Those
Kind of
slummy
weird,
guys.
right? But all of these requirements have since been rescinded, with the exception of the religious freedom. So that's
Oh,
good.
I thought you were gonna say baseball players.
Yeah, with the exception of
That
the
would've been
baseball
hilarious.
players.
Yeah, them damn baseball players.
He must be a football fan. I don't know. And this one I put in here. This is in the Caney Cemetery as well. And you will see headstones that have open books. This particular one has a closed book. And what that stands for is the ending of a family line. So basically, it's the last male heir
Yeah,
that has died without a child.
yeah.
Kind of sad.
The end of that chapter,
Yep.
basically.
It has closed down. And if you are in our area, you may be familiar with this particular story. This is located in LaHunt, just a little north and west of Independence. Um, and the story
It's
that
now a
I,
ghost town,
yeah, it is.
for
It's
those
not
who
there.
don't know. It's not a town anymore.
No. It used to actually be a cement factory and a little town built up around it, to house the workers. But what this particular thing is, they were adding to the company, on up the hill a little bit. And above this area that they were building this wall, a gentleman was working and he fell. And when he fell, he landed inside the wet cement wall that was already stood up. They couldn't get him out. Um, what they did was they took his shovel, his pick, and his wheelbarrow, and they placed them in the wall as a memorial for him. I've always been told that's true. I don't think I've ever heard anything. Have you heard anything to that? Do you know the
He
real story?
Yeah, so it's close. He didn't fall into the cement and died. He
Mhm.
had a massive heart attack on site while pouring.
Mm,
He's not buried in the wall or anything like that. They took him off the hospital, he didn't make it, and they did this in memorial to him,
mm.
but he's not in the wall, unfortunately, although that makes a fantastic
It
ghost
does.
story.
Yeah, I've
Um,
always heard that. So yeah.
La Hunt itself is very, very haunted and has all sorts of crazy going on around it, and that is definitely one we will do a show on at some
Yeah,
point
for
for
sure.
those who are interested. Um, it is almost impossible to get up to the site right now unless you know the right people or
Yeah.
the right way in. Um,
Way too many vandals have
yeah,
been in there and really messed it up. And it's getting really dangerous. I think the big stack fell too.
yeah,
Um,
the stack finally fell,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
We used to know exactly where it was because it had one huge stack that stayed up forever. Miraculously, even though almost the whole bottom of it was missing, it really should have fallen years ago, but
It had a piece bigger than a Volkswagen missing out of it and towards the bottom for, oh my gosh, 20, 30 years probably.
yeah,
A long time.
yeah. But right off of LaHunt is the LaHunt Cemetery. I can't remember the name of it. It's got a name. A
I
haunted little
can't remember either.
place. It's got a
I have
little
family
ghost
buried
girl
there.
that runs around in it. Well, of course you do.
I do. I have family buried
But
everywhere.
yeah, like I said, we will be doing a story on that sometime in the future, to give you all the details on it because it's a very interesting area and a very interesting backstory, full of fun characters. The famous actor Tom Mix was actually the mayor of this town for quite a while
Yes.
and
Yeah.
ran baseball leagues with all of the different crews that ran the cement factory. So,
And something I found out not too long ago, I'm on one of the Independence Facebook pages, and they were talking. Someone was talking about. They were asking if there were any Sears catalog houses in Independence, and there were some people that
mhm.
came on and said no, but some of the little houses that were in LaHunt were moved into Independence and are still there to this day. And I didn't realize that. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So okay, moving on. Getting close to the end here. This is one that I wanted to include just because it's so fun and it means so much to everybody in Caney.
Mhm,
This is a local family. Their names obviously are Buster. And if you look at the bottom, it says it's got a engraving of their home, and it says the Cotton Candy House underneath it. So if you grew up in Caney or actually probably in the area, you've heard of the Cotton Candy House at Halloween in Caney. In Caney, Halloween is a huge deal. It always has been. We have a little parade. Um, I was looking back. I can't remember off the top of my head what year we figured the parade started, but they were along like in the 20s, I think maybe.
yeah,
Um, and it ended like today. It's the grade school. All the kids take their costumes to school. They dress up. They walk downtown, and then everybody comes out and watches their kids walk through the parade. They go back. They have their little parties, and then they go home, eat dinner, and everybody hits the streets. And we still have the old-fashioned door-to-door trick-or-treating.
mhm,
A lot of the churches in different places, they do trunk or treat downtown at the same time. It's a huge deal. Our little library, we give out books to all the kids. And there's, oh my gosh, like Jess's house, she does a whole Nightmare on Bradley, and it's all Tim Burton
mhm,
themed. And they give out funnel cakes. It's just
yeah,
a blast. The whole town gets in on it. So this means a big deal to us. So yeah, I
yeah,
really like that one.
yeah, so,
There's
yeah, the
actually a
Busters,
heart.
I can't remember when they started doing cotton candy.
It was
Um,
before I was born because I remember going there when I was little. So
yeah,
it was
um, but
before,
yeah,
at
like,
least in the 70s.
it's just one of the you go to the cotton candy house on Halloween. It's just one of the
Mhm.
things you do. And, like Pam was saying, we have all these wonderful families in town that host, different treats at their houses. There's, uh, a specialty popcorn house. They have all these different flavorings you can put on it. There's glow stick house. There's a house that gives out, foot-long pixie sticks.
Yeah.
There's a house that passes out weird sodas. Yeah, Caney does it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Caney does it big. So, yeah, and this is in our home cemetery. Um, at just so all you know who maybe don't live in the Caney area. So when the Busters, when they passed, their children took it over. They still have the same home there, and they still all get together on Halloween night and do cotton candy. So
It's
it's
awesome.
fun. Yeah.
It's very it's fun to see my grandkids getting to do this when I was doing it as a kid.
Yeah.
It's a good
It's
time.
fun.
All right. And Jess, this is one of
Yeah,
yours.
this one's mine. This is just a little one-off. I found it when I was looking for some other stuff. It kind of popped up in some information when I was looking up weird headstones and stuff. Um, there's not a big story behind this one. There's not a haunted story or anything, but I thought it was really interesting. If you watch the first episode of the cemetery stuff that we did, Pam did a little discussion on stones that are metal, that
Oh,
are
yeah.
formed metal.
Mhm.
This stone is one of those, which is actually a little odd. You don't often find them in just the square, plain, rectangle-y shape. Usually they're a little bit more ornamented than this. But this one is just a plain metal one. And unfortunately, when it was casted in reverse. So it's a little hard to read, but it's the grave of Sarah Oliver.
Is it
It's
backwards
not
writing?
backwards writing, they literally casted it the wrong way,
Yeah.
right? She has no fancy backstory other than the fact that I think they probably couldn't afford to have it recast again, so they just dealt with what they got, sadly. If
If you
you're
hold a
interested
mirror
in
up,
s
it's okay.
Yeah, I guess you could look at it with a mirror. If you're interested in seeing this, this is in Kansas. This is at Maple Hill, Kansas, in the Old Stone Church Cemetery. They have a little stone church there that has a little cemetery off to the side of it, and that's where this one arrives. I can't even say it's stone, where this metal piece
Yeah.
resides.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's fun.
And Alicia said when we were talking about Halloween and Caney, someone needs to make a map of the houses. Some of those I've never heard of. Yeah, that would be cool.
Oh yeah, fun,
And this is our
fun.
last one. Funniest one that I saw. I love it. I was hoping for a pyramid.
That's funny.
Too awesome.
I was hoping for a
Okay.
pyramid. Yeah,
We
so
did really good tonight. Oh my gosh.
yeah, we did really well on time. Are we all ready for some notebook game?
Woohoo. I am.
Yeah? All right, so let me explain the game really quick for anybody who's watching who's not seen this before. So, uh, as you can see, my little moniker down there, I'm known because I'm a lame and I don't keep all my stuff on laptops. When I do my research, it goes into notebooks. So I have dozens and dozens of them full of just weird information. You can see like none of them really fits with each other. I mean, they fit for me because I literally would move on to the next topic because I would find something on the previous topic that would lead me to the next topic and blah blah blah. If you do research, you know what I'm talking about.
Y'all have no
So,
idea how hard it is to rein ourselves in on these episodes. Oh my gosh.
yeah,
This is probably
it's a
not even a quarter of what we found that we've talked about these
yeah.
last two.
So, well, just to give you guys a clue, like we were backstage before the show started about 35 to 40 minutes before the show started, just
Mhm.
discussing what we were going to put together in what order and picking apart what we needed and what we didn't because we couldn't present it all to you.
Yeah.
That would have been insane. Anywho, moving back to the game. So, what we do here is you get to peek into my weird little brain. I have 5 notebooks that I've pulled off my shelves sitting in front of me. And all you have to do, we let everybody in the chats and stuff pick out a few of these for me. You're going to pick a notebook 1 through 5, and then you're going to pick a number 65 or under. 1 to 65, and then I will go to whatever the page that is and tell you whatever the heck is on it, no matter what, even if it's just some weird inane note I wrote to myself or a full page of information. So, are we ready?
So if you want to, anybody that wants to put in a notebook number and a page number, and we'll get started.
Yep. 1 through 5 and 1 through 65. And we'll get started on that.
Ooh. Everybody's being slow, so I want to start.
Okay.
Pick notebook number 4, page
Okay.
13.
1, 2, 3. Page 13. Okay. Ooh. Okay, so this page is on dragon paths. And
Ooh,
Pam knows what I'm talking about, but
nice.
most
I
of you
do.
will not. Yeah, so lung maze or paths of the dragons are energy lines discovered by the ancient Chinese. So basically, ley lines. The Chinese knew about them well before the Europeans did. Um, the legend behind them is called the Heart of the Dragon. So it's said to be found at a knoll standing in a small valley among the hills. From this center heart, the veins of the dragon current run over the surrounding valleys and hills. Near the dragon's heart, the force is strong and active. This is where the dragon and the tiger, or the male and female currents, merge harmoniously together. So for the Chinese, they believe the dragon's heart beats at one point and the lines shoot out from it, and that beat keeps the lines charged. And if a line gets cut from the dragon's heart, that line goes dead. So
Ah,
it kind of describes how the ley lines on the planet keep their energy and why some lines are not very active and some are more active than others. Kind of
very
that thing
cool.
there.
That was a good
Yeah.
one. I like
Yeah.
that. Okay, I'm just going to go down the line as we got them in.
Go for it.
Lacey wanted notebook 3, page 12.
Oh my god. Hey, Lacey. I have not talked to Lacey in years. She is my girl from my youth. I used to kick it with. So 3 and 12. Okay, so this page is on the Thompson Park Vortex in Thompson Park, Watertown, New York. So this park has a really weird phenomena attached to it. Um, it started in the 1930s. They had reports of odd sensations near a particular hill in this park. They had alleged sightings of mist like apparitions and unexplained noises. The place boasts also Bigfoot encounters, UFO encounters, and a time vortex that happens between the zoo and the golf course. And it causes disappearance and reappearances and time loss. So they've literally had people say they were walking across the parkway to head towards the little golf course, and they would suddenly be on the wrong side of the park.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Cool.
Now, the coincidental part about this park is so Area 51, we're talking about New Mexico. Area 51's code name in the government is Watertown, right?
Interesting.
Uh, Alan, I can't remember his last name. Alan Do starts with a D. Anyway, he was the head of the CIA, and is a Watertown native.
Oh,
Doles.
that's where it came from.
Doles was his last name. So it has this really weird connection to Area 51 too, and they think it's some kind of a vortex they set up, or like a tunnel, like a time tunnel they set up to get people back and forth to Area 51 from the coast.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah, it's
That was a
weird.
good one.
Weird
Good job,
stuff.
Lacey.
Yeah. Hey, Lacey. All right. Book
Book 3, page
3,
17 for
page
Enzo.
17. Not much farther than that. 12. Okay, let's see here. Let me get a thing in this. Oh, this is glitch in the Matrix stories.
Oh, nice.
So, well, I'm just going to read it because it's somebody's glitch in the Matrix story. So it says, about a year ago, my girlfriend and I went to eat dinner at Chipotle. It's a smallish shopping area with a burger joint and a neighboring Chipotle, one of those kind of upper class type shopping areas. We pulled into the parking lot in front of the establishments around 5 p.m. on a Friday evening to find an empty parking lot. There were no tables outside. There were no cars in the parking spots, not a person in sight, and even the lights inside the buildings were off. Completely confused, I took the car in sort of a loop around the building in order to leave. The only thing of interest was a single fire truck parked alongside the building. Headlights on, but no emergency lights, and no one in the truck. It struck us as a little odd. Maybe a fire in the building? As we pulled around the back side of the building and finished looping around, we drive past the front facade of the building. Except this time, every parking spot was full. Tables are outside with patrons at them, food half eaten. There are people walking around, and the lights inside the building are all on as well. But the fire truck is gone. Mind you, it took us less than 30 seconds to make a circle around that building.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That was a good one, Enzo. Good job. Okay, Ashley, notebook 4, page 34.
34. Let me skip through.
Chris said about that one, that was a good one. And Rick said, yeah, that's weird. It is.
Always weird. Okay. Okay. Oh, this one's on crop circles.
Cool.
So, what am I looking at here? Let me focus in on what I was doing. Oh, okay. Gerald S. Hawkins, he was an author. He found what am I trying to say here? Sorry, it's my own notes to myself. I kind of have to figure out what I was saying. Oh, he found that Stonehenge was a computer that measured and predicted eclipses and showed other interactions between celestial bodies. After measuring crop circles, he found that the measurement matched the frequencies of the major scales in music, and also found Euclid's geometry theorems popping up within the measurements of the stones in the circle. And I also mentioned at the bottom the weird metal balls and spheres that they were finding on the edges of the fields and the edges of the circles. And I have a little note to myself here that I had a photo listed somewhere that showed some of these that came out of a circle in Hampshire in 1990.
That's been on my list forever for our show, is to do something on harmonics. We definitely need to. That'll be a really good one. Good job, Ash.
Right.
Okay. Alicia, notebook 4, page 46.
Okay. Ooh, I'm going to go skip back a little bit here. Back to 20, 50, and then back. Okay. That's right, isn't it? 34. Yes. Okay. So, this is some of the misplaced objects in history section that we were working on. So this one is on the man-made wall in the coal mine in Oklahoma. So I'll just read out what I have written here. So in 1928, a man by the name of Atlas Alman Mathis, boy, how that's hard to say. Atlas Alman Mathis was working in a deep coal mine shaft when he discovered strange concrete blocks lying on the floor. They were 12-inch cubes that were so smooth and polished on the outside that all 6 sides could serve as mirrors. He chipped one open to find that it was full of gravel or a type of concrete. He started to shore up the room with timber, but a cave-in began, and he just made it out. When he came back, he found a solid wall of these polished blocks. Another wall made of the same blocks was also found the same exact day down a different shaft that he wasn't in. Mathis said officers of the mining company pulled the men from the mine and told them not to tell anybody. They moved them to a new mine in Wilburton, Oklahoma. The men, not the stones. They moved the men over to a whole different mine in Wilburton. The age of the coal in the mine that they found the blocks in was around 286 million years old. So the stone
Wow,
wall they found encased in it had to have been at least that old. So
that's
polished so
crazy.
well, they were mirrored. Yeah. And also down underneath that is a section that I had written up on the parallel forest in Lawton, Oklahoma.
Yep.
Uh, just to let everybody know. So this forest is still there just to the northwest of Lawton, Oklahoma. It's called the parallel forest. Um, this was a really dumb project that was done. It was a 16-acre forest of more than 20,000 red cedars that were planted as an experiment by the federal government. They did this, they were trying to test to see if they could figure out a way to stop dust bowls from happening, to get that erosion to stop. So they call it the parallel forest because they were literally placed exactly equidistant from each other. And it creates this horrible feeling when you walk inside. The red cedars are the types of trees that grow long stems at the bottom and then put out their little, what do you call that?
The
Their
foliage.
leaves,
Yeah, the
the
leaves.
foliage. So you walk into this area where you've got a low ceiling of foliage over you, and in any direction you see are perfect straight lines of
Be
these
like a fun
trees.
house effect.
It's exactly what it is. Um, so I don't know what else do I have written about it. Do I have anything else? It's just people have reported orbs and drum sounds. They've seen headless ghosts. There is occult activities that happen inside. The worst part of it is that people literally get lost in it, even though it's not a huge area. You get disorientated very quickly. You don't know which way you're pointed. And with all of this running beside you, it's a creepy, weird little place. And that Lawton's also known for its infamous dog man that
Yep.
apparently runs the area too. So people are scared of going in it, not for fear that that's where the dog man lives, but that you might get caught in it for long enough that he'll find you
Yeah.
because it's disorientating. So, yeah, parallel forest.
Ooh, very cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
What do we got?
Chris wants book 3, page 30.
All right. Okay, page 30. Skip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Oh, this page is on time travel theory.
Ooh, nice.
Boy, we're hitting some weird topics tonight, aren't we? So,
Running.
under here,
Yeah.
I have listed the Newtonian universe theory, which is a theory on a three-dimensional Euclidean spiral manifold that changes along an inexorable arrow of time. And I know nobody just understood what I said. And that's why underneath of that, I wrote my own notes because I probably had to look it up in 3 different books to figure out what the hell that meant. Um, one straight fixed line, space, time plus motion are absolute. Time travel would be impossible in this theory, the way that it states it.
Mhm.
And then I have Einsteinian universe theory, a 4-dimensional space-time continuum that curves and in which time has the character of a special dimension or a spatial dimension, excuse me, um, meaning there are variations and warps within it. I talk about spatial relativity, general relativity, quantum universe theory, and then we go into the paradoxes, the grandfather paradox, the casual loop paradox, the killing Hitler paradox, which we can't all go into tonight, but and I'll melt your all's brains just reading it. So
That would be interesting sometime to hit on, though, because it's fascinating.
yeah.
Okay, so the next one is this is Stacy. Cord says notebook 1, page 1. She said, sorry, she just got here. Her internet is wonky. Hopefully we'll get to listen on replay soon. We hope so, because we did get to talk about some of the things that you sent us earlier from Greensburg.
Yes. Go back and watch it because we
And hi,
did all the
Cord.
stuff in the history on that. Yes, hi Cord. Hope you're good tonight. All right, so Buddy wants me to do notebook
Notebook
1,
1,
page 1.
page 1.
Wow, I don't have anything to do here. Okay, let me tuck that away. So page 1 of this first notebook is on the Bloody Benders.
Ooh, nice.
I don't know if Cord wants to hear about the Bloody Benders. So I'll just do a little quick overview for those of you who may not know who they are, although I'm sure everybody does. The Bloody Benders were basically our local serial killers back in 1873 through 76. They came from out of town, took up residence along a local trade route that we had, set up shop, set up a little inn and a place where you could stop in and get supplies, get a hot meal, maybe stay overnight, and then head along your way.
Maybe eat your
Only yeah, it started to be that a lot of people went there but did not leave. They were cracking people over the top of the head, stealing their money, their horses, and whatever else they might have on them, and chopping them up in the basement and then burying them out on the property.
They had a trap door set in the floor, and they had
Yeah.
like a piece of canvas strung across to make the room into 2 rooms. And for some reason, they would set the visitors with their backs to this canvas that had a very dirty spot, rusty looking spot that was blood, and they continued to sit there. I don't know.
Yeah. They
Scary.
ended up they ended up finally killing the wrong guy. So they went after this dude who stopped in there with his young daughter by the name of Longcore.
Mhm.
They were on their way. He had just lost his wife and he was on his way to visit family in a different state, I believe. Stopped in for the night. They took him out and the daughter. And unfortunately for the Benders, what they didn't know was that Longcore's next door neighbor was Dr. Henry York, one of the most influential businessmen in the area, who had family in high places. Let's
Mhm.
just say, manhunt went down. They finally, after this and that, we'll do a story on them later. Figured it out, went on a chase. They didn't actually catch them. They kind of spread out and did their own thing, but they did start digging up the ground around the house and started finding their misdeeds. Um, I will say, interestingly enough, for anybody who's interested in the Benders, as of right now, a gentleman has taken over that property, and the State Historical Society and some of the universities are in there digging up the area. And the reason why they're doing that is because they didn't stop digging up the bodies because they ran out of bodies. They stopped digging up bodies back then because they couldn't do it anymore.
Mhm.
They couldn't stomach all the bodies. So they just found a stopping place and stopped.
Mhm.
So we don't know how many more bodies are out there. And there was a lot of other things they found too that weren't so great. Like they found one spot that was just literally parts. So those obviously belong to
Somebody.
some buddies,
Mhm.
many arms and legs, and so yeah. That's the misdeed of the Benders, and that's a whole nother
So
show.
yuck. Sorry, Cord.
Sorry, Cord.
Okay, Rick, we have 2 more.
Okay,
Rick said book 2, page 51.
page 51. All right, let me do some skipping here. Luckily, I've got 25 pages in between my little
In
things
case
here,
anyone
so I
wonders
can
how she
literally.
got through them so quickly.
Yeah. Okay, so these are on weird anomalous places in Oklahoma that I didn't have a place to list. Like they didn't fall into a category. So on this page, is the Suicide Forest in Rock Springs, Caddo County, Oklahoma. It's the site of a now cemetery. Um, it was a forested area where many suicides by local Indians took place circa 1800s. It was a designated burial site for them. 148 count found of suicides over a 20 to 30-year period. Um, a church was built nearby by a Creek minister to kind of stop the suicides. 1870 to 1900 was when that was built and the suicides finally stopped. But yeah, that area out there is called the suicide forest because of that. Unfortunately, Indians didn't have it very good back then.
No.
And below that is, oh, I love this one. The mystery gas of Roger Mills County in Oklahoma. This one happened in 1863. So this mystery gas just pops up in this area all of a sudden. They never figured out what it was, but it caused illnesses, nausea, coughing, diarrhea, skin burns, cracked and crumbling houses. Like it affected structures within
Oh,
the area
wow.
that it hit, right?
Huh. That's interesting.
It blistered the paint on structures and other things. It darkened people's silver and it caused clothing to disintegrate. It killed livestock, birds, and all the insects in the area.
Hmm. That's
It
weird. I
it
don't think I,
it
what was
came
that
in
called
and
again?
it was just I called it the mystery gas. Like it doesn't have a name, but it happened in Rogers Mills County, Oklahoma in 1963.
Enzo said, I suspect the bean scene from Blazing Saddles. Maybe so.
Yeah, they never figured out what it was. I do remember the time I did a little bit of detective work on it and was trying to see if there was any kind of industries in the area at the time that had popped up. Even like a feed type of situation where maybe they were storing feed that had gone rotten.
Mhm.
Anything that I couldn't find anything like that. But Lord
Interesting.
knows what was passing through the area at the
Yeah.
time. Maybe they had a shipment of something that came through, a train, and something dumped. I don't know. But yeah,
Yeah. And
that's
just
what's on that
wasn't
page.
talked about. Very, very
Yeah.
possible. All right. The last one. This is Ginger.
No,
Notebook 3, page 24.
all right. So I get to skip all the way back and then just
This
move
has been
back
a good
one.
night for notebooks.
Yeah.
Been a fun one.
Oh, this is on the Hesperides Islands.
Oh, cool. Enzo said on the last one, was there a large body of water nearby that could have had a methane leak?
Yeah, that I don't know. I don't know. I could have been, it was so long ago and it wasn't highly reported. It made it into the local papers and it made it once into a large paper, but then it was just kind of hushed after that. Um yeah, just a
Tell.
mystery gas of some kind. All
Hmm.
right. So this page is talking about the Hesperides Islands. So if you've never heard of them before, we actually found this. We were doing a show on kind of glitch in the matrix type of things,
Disappearing
where
islands
yeah,
kind of thing.
disappearing, reappearing pieces of land, like entire huge islands and stuff going missing. And the Hesperides was listed by Rosemary.
Ellen Guiley.
Yeah, I was making sure in my head that's who it was. It was her that listed this place in her book at one point. She had a book on it. Well, not on this topic, but several topics, but it was brought up within it. And I went hunting for it and couldn't find a whole lot else about it. Apparently, these islands would pop up. I believe they're in the Atlantic. Yeah, in the Atlantic. And for years, they were listed on little maps here and there, but
Yeah.
then they would be missing. And pirates and other ocean goers and stuff would talk about just offhand, oh yeah, the Hesperides were here today. And other times they were gone, as if it was a normal day to day. Yeah, they're here this week, but they won't be there next week. If you need to get anything off the island, you should get there now. And they had like
You know,
their
while it's
own,
there.
yeah, they had like their own stamp and they had their own money that circulated on the
It's
island that
almost like
actually got brought off
Brigadoon,
the island.
you know?
Yeah, it's really strange, but, an interesting thing for us, like, we always talk about how when we research stuff, sometimes it lays dormant for a while and then it rears its ugly head again for no reason, and the Hesperides did that for us because, we had done the show and had walked away from it and had gone on to do other things, and, one day we were doing, a story on the annals of Kentucky, which is a book that
Yes.
talks about the origins of Kentucky and all the weirdness that happens there. And we were separately reading the Annals of Kentucky again to do the show on this. And they didn't catch it, but I did. In the middle of the Annals of Kentucky, there's an entire paragraph on the Hesperides.
Yeah, totally missed it. And she was like, "Did you guys not see this?" And Mark and I were like, "See what?" And she brings it up, and we're like, "How did we miss that?"
Yeah. And
We did.
why it got brought up in the middle of a book on the origins of Kentucky. It was literally somebody just talking about how they had been on this voyage or something and had stopped there at the Hesperides because they happened to be there at the time.
And we didn't
The
note it
islands were
anywhere
there.
else, did we? That anyone
Yeah.
had said anything about it being in the annals of Kentucky, other than
Yeah.
when Jess found it. Yeah, so it
Yeah.
wasn't
So one
widely
of those cool
referred.
little Easter eggs that pop up for us occasionally.
They
All
do.
right. Do we have anything else? Or are we good?
That is it.
All right. Awesome. Yay. I think that was a good one. Right?
Hmm.
All right. So, do you have anything left before we end it out, Pam?
I don't think I do, other than, we were talking a lot about cemetery symbols and stuff, and I should have brought
Mhm.
this up earlier. And all of our show notes will be on our website, which is Bordertown Paranormal.
Mhm.
Just find it under the Bordertown Strange tab. But this particular book was the best. See if I can get it on there. Understanding Cemetery Symbols, and it's by Tui Snyder. So if you are interested in it, I would highly suggest checking this book out.
Yeah. Super cool. All
Mhm.
right. So, let's get out of here cuz we're just a hair over time, but that's cool. That's all right. So, okay. Well, thanks, Chris.
Yeah. Thanks, Alicia.
Thanks, Alicia. All right. Don't leave us yet. Listen to the end here for me. So, thanks to everybody for hanging out with us. A big thank you to Stacy Huey for her story contributions and all
Mhm.
those who hang out and participate in the chat rooms with us. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell. And find us on social media. Literally, right now, if you're watching us live and you have not done that yet, just poke down there real quick and hit the bell or hit share and like. It kind of helps get us out there a little bit more so we can get some more viewers and get rolling on this. Like Pam said, you can find a listing of our show notes, resources, and references on our website, www.bordertownparanormal.com, under the Bordertown Strange button that you'll find at the top of the page. Catch a new show every other Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central on YouTube and Facebook. And I'll just a reminder, I said at the beginning of the show, but I know some of us came in late. So April is going to be our cryptid month, and we will be discussing cryptid books and all things monsters with authors Robert Prevost and Brian Terrell. These two shows, while new, will not be live like we've been running it. Pam gets to go on a little cruise excursion, and I'm prepping for an art exhibition that's coming up. So they will be new shows, but they will not be live. You do still get notebook game though. We had our guests pick what I read out.
We
They
did. It was
will
fun.
drop, yeah, they will drop at 7 p.m. on every other Wednesday, just like we do now.
April
They just
10th
won't
and
be
April
live.
24th. So it'll
Yeah.
be every 2 weeks like normal.
Yeah, and absolutely catch them. They were super fun to do. Robert Prevost is a hoot, and we didn't just talk about cryptids. Like we went into near death experiences and
Mhm.
hauntings and Bigfoot hunting, and it was just it's a hoot and a half. And Brian Terrell is always fantastic. So
Yeah,
make sure to catch
absolutely.
those shows, and then come May we'll go back to the lives again. just so y'all
Yes.
know. Okay. Um, Anywho, so we're gonna end this out. Keep it weird, keep it strange, and remember everything is connected. And we'll see you
Yay.
later.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.